fire's gonna fall on us. Oh, the fire's gonna fall. Every heart will know the love of God.
Okay, I want to honor your time for being here on time. So I think we can wait and get started. Really is a privilege and an honor to be with you this morning. My name is Gary Almeida, and I am from African Enterprise. And African Enterprise is an evangelistic organization that was founded in 1962 by an Anglican, Dr. Michael Cattany, with a vision of evangelizing the cities of Africa through word and deed in partnership with the church. And through its early start in Pietermaritzburg with our first meeting, City Hall in 1952, with 4 team members, the partnership and ministry has grown into 12 teams across Africa. And we have at least one outreach through that partnership happening once a month. I've just come back from Botswana, where we worked with over 100 churches in sharing the gospel around the Kabarone. And through various means of stratified evangelism basically means ministering to various strata, people in different areas of society, in prisons, in hospitals, at schools, on the street. We were able to minister the word of God to 280,000 people. Not one big stadium event, but over 280,000 people with the gospel, because we equipped individuals to meet people where they're at. Okay, that is what stratified evangelism is all about. And today I want to talk about how do you talk about Jesus without being that guy. You know who that guy is. We've all met that guy before, and sometimes we've even been that guy. You're talking with your friend around a rugby game, around the bride, and you're having a good time, and one of the guys goes, "Hey, wow, did you see Kanisi? He's just such a great captain. You know, he inspires the nation and the team is winning, and we're all sitting around the fire going, yes, yeah, he's great, great, great." And then you have that guy. You know, that guy. He's always around, and he said, "Yeah, speaking of fear, have you met the true Messiah?" What happened when that guy begins to, you land up being the person next to him going on, how do I get away from that guy? And there's this conflict, there's this tension that we have, because we ourselves sometimes that guy, and if we're honest, we're the one who forces Jesus into every conversation. Yeah. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but there's a way. The tension is that we love Jesus, and we want our friends and we want our colleagues to know him, but we don't want to be pushy, we don't want to be fake, we don't want to be, cringy, we don't want to be that guy. So what happens? No. But what happens is that we swing to the other extreme, and we end up saying nothing good. We end up being other. We say done. But there's good news with regards to evangelism, and there's good news with regards to sharing the gospel. And it doesn't have to be preached there before. It doesn't have to be scary. It can be as natural as talking to a good God. And that's what I want to just share with you today. How do you talk about Jesus without being that and nothing would you do it? When it comes to conversation, I found this matrix really helpful. There's 3 levels of conversation. The first level of conversation is the interest level. And the interest level is all the surface stuff that we had. It's like, What's your favorite food? How's the weather? Did you watch the game? There's nothing scary about it. I really like the man for it. Yeah, guys in the back. Unfortunately, we couldn't get the projector, so they gave me a little screen. Kind of it. So if you want to stand up, you can. Okay. But the first level is interest. And the second level is what we call values. And that those are the things that matter. And why do you love that? Well, why is family so important, why is it that you want to make a difference in the world? You're not on the value driven way with then they want to question how is people who got it done? And is worldview. And worldview is where we get the really big question. And what is life about? Is there a God? Where can we find hope? Don't deal with worldview. Now, the problem that I'm found with many evangelists I'm seeing is that they start the conversation at what level? Which level do you think most evangelism tools start their conversation? Is it invitation, value, or worldview? Worldview. That's exactly it. That guy starts conversation at the worldview level. Some of the worldview questions are like, if you were to die to it, if you stood before God and you asked you why you should let you into heaven, or what would you do? And do you know for sure that if you die, you're going to go to heaven? Those are all worldview type questions. And they're not bad questions. They're actually very important for people that have good health. But the problem is that it is the timing is good because worldview is patient. Only and the month it would be hard. We thought they would okay. We only really start to expose our worldview with people that we trust. But it's not because the question is wrong, it's because the timing is wrong. We have to earn the right, like they don't, to speak to keep them active and you don't share something precious with someone that you cannot learn. What I mean, because you don't trust that. Right? But we trust. We don't want to avoid this worldview question. We want to avoid it, but I think about it, but not to treat them and let it be in mankind. And so I want to get a little practical. I know. I want to show you how easy it's now because we're going to practice on getting regard to the being on will than what they. So the conversating one to say we're not that kind yet. So how are we going to do it? Is I'm going to ask you to pair up with someone, okay? Not a friend, not someone that you came with a complete stranger, okay? Think of this as a trial separation that you can integral to, and we'll come back to it in 2 minutes, okay? I just want you to break up and meet someone. Then you're have make a feel why they are a total. My dentist table thing is can we do that again? See, I too, and mine for picked up or after everyone is right here. Everyone is right here. Okay, all right. I don't believe that. I saw these two walking together. Come on. Yeah, I promise you'll only be separated even when you have time. And go to be with someone that you don't know. You can't. Where is that one? Okay. Would you please follow your I'm actually that you want to hold and really, if I well, I didn't even church, but look at him and I need to try like you just I people how you can it's good. Nah. You there, let the child they got you. You're out for money, like, you need to find out like that. And literally, what I want to do, okay, I'm glad that you already not me for me, but what I'd like you to do, you've got reading, if I get you, And yeah, that's true. I like to talk just for one bit of the person and to the person next to you, your stranger, and you can when you and talk about well, three questions that are on the screen. Number one, the cat. What are you watching, reading, or into right now? Okay. So what are you doing? Number two, why do you like it? And number three, because can you think that those stories can make a reality in your life? What can? Do they connect to in podcast? And you got that? Three simple questions. And you have 1 minute to tell that person about what you like, what you want, and or like it was mentioned. Third, greatest question. Repeat the question. Okay, level one. What are you watching? But I'm watching right now. Or what are you reading right now? You will read that. Or what are you into right now? So my wife is not into missing for the first time in I don't know why, but she's not into missing. Then and what she thinks you under the second question is why do you like it? You stop and then the third question is how fun. Do you think that story that you're reading or that you watch on chilling or that habit that caught that you how does that all how does that fit into meaning right now? Yeah, that you can maybe tell you how does that fit into the life? Okay? Are we clear with that? Y'all have you got the I know it's a little myopic at the back end. Yeah. Now they can put again back. Okay, now I've got a timer. So I just want to make sure everybody is that's good. It's ready to go. All right. So keep it on. I get that. Let's go with the round. They never have a duck. Yeah, that's the one you got playing everyone about your what or you know what and I know I don't run to go with what are great you can want quite old is about your play and you work out on the ad cards and other so then I chat with and after I'm going to do work and the election tool and never forget when you cut your feet yeah or people one I that is what that's not the rule to working was and it probably I really want to that and one thing is I don't how did they go well, they find it something how that point you want that right I mean got that air to have yeah how that everything and what and living on one church right now what's the matter with them and why did I never you know I know man for part but at the my everything too I know on the time here but what nothing like surveys group and that did over and on one little yeah I have kind of I know yeah Bible what it is and her phone and what they do yeah right you know right don't look like I go what you know I know I think to I do art you know it's oh right I'm like that go art and or that one right you mean why what do you want to wear yeah different. Oh, what? I'm somewhere left up.
But kind of just not to touch it. Maybe move, if I can move the chair a little bit.
I know, but the that Matt angry because if I would tell I'm going to write and I'll get a clean I get your few minutes to stop. I didn't know I didn't know I really did that. I think I don't have my I thought anything about the right. Like it's a character doing I can't go and plug your mouth. I mean, I would be like that Bible. Don't have to know it's you and go. I know I don't want to argue, but I'm not going to call you back and you out. You know, I'll go and I stop. I'm now sitting with the problem that I can't get to stop talking. Okay, yeah, I'm reacting out of Alright, guys, can we, maybe we can carry on with our lunch break. So how do you want that going in the let it feel natural how you do. Okay? It wasn't put wine or anything like that in you. In less than a minute, went to speak about worldview issues without it feeling weird or strange. It felt natural. That's all I'm going. Why was that? And I'm really cool. But it's because of where you thought you started at the point of interest, something that we have in common or in time. Then you were able to find something value you got that common in here. And then move that make it to a worldview declaration. Well, naturally, without it feeling like I'm talking to that guy. Okay. So now you've got a secret weapon to evangelism. Don't start with a worldview type question. They are great and they are important, but don't start with them. Start with interest. Move to values. And then bring in a worldview. So now we know how to start great conversations. But I want to give you the secret ingredient to having great conversations. Okay? The secret ingredient is this. The power of listening. You see, people don't always want to debate, but they do always want to be heard. And so often, when we are engaging with our friends about Jesus, we feel that if we've got all of this experience, we can go into this great debate, and we have to have all of these answers. Okay? People don't want to always go into debates, but they do want to be heard. And so, listening is important. Now, I'd like one volunteer just to come up.
Listening is the skill.
Yeah, it is a skill, and I'm going to show you how easy it is. I just need one volunteer who is brave enough to come and have a conversation with me. Anyone? Okay. You're not going to have to preach a sermon or anything, okay? You're just going to have to speak to me. Okay? Come a bit closer. I promise you I don't bite.
No, I know that.
Okay. All right.
No, they must come closer to you. You're very good kid.
Sorry. I'm Gary. And your name is? McQueen. McQueen, how is your week?
Because I made a decision to come to the Anglicans Ablaze
Only last week. I bet you the reason why you waited for the last minute is because you had a stressful time at work. You know, you got this boss that just piles pressure on you all the time and everything like that, and he doesn't know what he's doing. And in fact, you know, you sit there and thinking, how come are you the boss? I'm the one who's having to do all the work, right? Right? But can I just tell you something? You know how you sort the person out like that? You don't work for them. You work for yourself. How did you feel? We're going to press pause here. How did you feel about that interaction? It's because I just jumped in. I wasn't listening. Okay? I wanted to give my opinion, my story, my situation. I wasn't listening.
Your solution.
And the thing is that when we talk, especially as Christians, when we're doing evangelism, and I've been doing this for years, this is what I've noticed, is that we start to talk. And then if you don't listen, we start to argue. And if you don't argue, I get louder. Okay? Because you're not listening. And then when it's getting like, come on, I just kick you to the curb because you're not making sense. Okay? That's our type of talking. Okay? We start a conversation, then we just argue, then we get louder, and then we kick the person to the side. Okay? That's not talking. Okay? That's not listening. Okay? But let's try this again. Okay? Now, how is your week?
This week, right?
Why would you say it's a big?
Because I have got an answer to the question that I thought would require time to really think through how to get to the answer.
There must be quite deep and important questions. Would you mind just telling me what the question is worth?
Well, okay. These were questions relating to what I'm doing and where I am in terms of my grade. The questions that related to the fact that I felt I was losing and wasn't going. And this was leading to way down
So if I'm hearing you right, you're battling with issues around purpose, and you're just looking for questions around that. I sense that you're like a person of deep faith. And so you were battling. How did you work through that?
Like I said, because these were ongoing issues, I had decided I'm going to take this time, not here, because I have a time from work. I wanted to use that time to actually look the answer. But then, like I said, just on the and I don't know a lot of what is just here and touched upon
doing the work. Then what happens is
Now, I really don't have all the answers in the world, but I do know that Jesus promises to give us peace. Okay? He says, my peace I give to you, not as the world gives. Okay? So we will never find peace in all of the things that we do, or even in political systems or work. They might give us some guidance, but they'll never give us real peace. Real peace comes with relationship with Jesus. Do you have a relationship with Jesus? Okay. Thank you. We'll end it there. Okay. Did you see how easy that is? Listening builds trust, and trust opens the door to Jesus. My gran always taught me that, as people we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So we need to be listening as twice as much as what we are talking. And that's great evangelistic advice. We need to be people that are willing to listen. Take time to be the person. And by listening, we get to hear where the person really is at. And the good thing about practicing listening, you've heard that saying, practice makes? It's wrong. Okay, it's wrong. Okay, I'm a philosophy major and I can tell you why it's wrong. Because what happens if you practice doing the wrong thing? You're learning to do it perfectly wrong. So practice doesn't make perfect, it makes permanent. Okay? Practice makes permanent. Okay? If you practice doing a bad habit, it becomes a habit that you can't really break, right? Until you learn a new habit, then you practice that, and then that becomes replaces permanent. Okay? But anyway, that was just a side joke. Okay? The more we practice listening to where the person really is at, it opens the door to the gospel. Because it means that that person is opening themselves up. Because what are you doing? You're not debating with them. You are listening to them. Remember, people don't want debates, but they do want to be heard.
So I would want to say.
So I've got a little bit of a Bible quiz for you. Here's the quiz. How many direct questions did Jesus answer? Any idea?
This is the teacher.
Yeah, the questions that Jesus was asked, how many did he answer directly? Okay, take a guess. What do you mean by few? Less than 100? Less? None? Okay. Okay.
That guy was doing my
Well, through the Gospels, you answered less than 10. But how many questions did he ask? Any idea how many questions Jesus asked? Many. Okay? He actually asked over 300 questions. Now, think about that. The Son of God, who really had the answer for every question that could ever be asked of him, chose not to answer all of them, but he asked more. Why do you think he did that?
Because if people had the answer already, why ask him the question? When we already have the answer.
Exactly. So what he was doing is that he was nudging the truth out of them. Okay? He nudged them to think. Just like I asked you just now, does practice make perfect? You automatically said yes. Because you weren't thinking. It's because you'd never been challenged on that idea. You just accepted it as yes, that is true. But Jesus never did that. He asked way more questions than he answered. Okay? And I think that's an awesome tool for evangelism. We should be asking way more questions than giving plain answers. You see, maybe evangelism isn't about having all of the answers. Maybe it's about asking really good questions. And so we need to be willing to ask these questions that nudge us forward. So what is a nudge question? A nudge question by the Gary Dictionary definition is small, curious prompts that move conversations forward without making them awkward. So it gives people time to open up. Okay. So a couple of examples of nudge questions will come up on the screen. You know, for instance, that sounds important to you. Why? Or where do you think that sense of justice or that idea of hope, where does it come from? Okay. How do you find hope when life gets tough? You see, you're moving the conversation along without it being awkward. You move them along. So let's play a quick game here. I'll put up some everyday statements, and I'd like for you to tell me how would you answer these questions. So, first one, while work has been so stressful lately, someone at work or something like that, a family member tells you, hey, it's been really stressful at work lately. How could you nudge that conversation along?
What is stressful?
What has been making it stressful? Yeah. Another example? And why is it so hard? You know? And so they will end up telling you what is really on their heart. Once again, I think we jump to the answers way too quickly. Now, I know that there are some folks that are really young, so you might not know this, but the majority of us might remember this show on TV. Do you remember Noot for Noot?
Yeah.
Okay, you remember that show? There was a part in the show where, you know, where all the big money was where they used to buy the notes. Okay? And if you bought one note, you know, you would get most of the money. But how many times did the person get the song based on one note? Very seldom. Because a C is a C. You know, how many songs have been written in C? Okay? But what would they do? They would ask, well, hey, you know, I've been noticing there's a theme for the episode. So they've been observant, and they say, give me 3 notes or 4 notes. And so through those 3 notes, they now get a chord. And that chord is the song.
I want to just touch on a little bit of my
We should be asking questions to find out what is the real song that's playing on the person's heart. Is it despair? Is it brokenness? Is it hopelessness? Is it anger? You know, is it hope? Okay? Because the last thing you want to do is someone is really excited and now you kill their joy. Because you think they are sorry. They're crying, but they're crying tears of joy. Okay? So, by asking questions, we're able to find the real song, the real tune of their heart. Okay? Let's try another one.
If you feel a bad question and you get an answer that doesn't satisfy you, what do you do?
Okay? We'll get to the Q&A's just now, but that's a good question. Okay? So, we just want to practice our listening skills right now, the nudging questions. So, life just feels so unfair sometimes. How could we answer that?
The power of that movement is in
Why do you think life is unfair? What's going on for you to think that life is unfair? Because life is unfair. Okay. But it's how we deal with that that gives us hope or despair. What about this last one? I can't wait for the weekend. Okay. Why? What's so important? What's happening? Okay. Okay. You're moving the conversation forward. Okay. So you see how easy it is to be an evangelist. There's nothing to fear. Okay.
So the idea for put you there on that I've got a
What is stress? Well, stress in itself is just a real sense of being overwhelmed, that you can't cope. Okay? that you feel that there's no way to move. So there's just like this pressure that's coming on you that you can't get rid of. So not all stress is bad. Okay, I do think that we need some stress in our life to move us forward, because otherwise we would just sit on the chair. Okay, but too much stress can have a negative effect on us emotionally, physically, spiritually, because we feel overwhelmed, okay? And cramped in, that we sometimes can't even breathe, and then that manifests itself in anxiety and panic attacks and things like that. But these nudge questions help us to not be that person, that guy. Okay? We know evangelism is important. Okay? We know that we're to give a reason for the hope that we have. 1 Peter 3 verse 15 to 16. Okay? Give a reason for the hope that you have. But do this with gentleness and respect. And so, let's bring this all together. I want to, in the time that remains, we've got about 10 minutes or so, we can open up to some Q&A, but let's just all bring it together. Okay? 2 key tips to ensure that you are not that guy the next time you share the gospel is to remember how to start a conversation. Okay? It starts with interests, values, worldview. Okay? Then we also earn the trust of people. Okay? We earn trust by listening. And thirdly, we open hearts by asking those nudge questions. Because then we'll get to see what is the real song that is being played on that person's heart. So, as we wrap up, I have a closing challenge for you. There are 28 of you in this room. My challenge to you is this week, share the gospel with someone, but in a way that you're not that guy. Try it this way. Interests, values, worldview. Listen, ask questions, and see what happens. I'd love to know where that is. But will you take up that just challenge? Because potentially in this room that means that 28 other people might hear the gospel, the true gospel for the very first time. Because the gospel is about Jesus and nothing else other than Jesus. It's not about making you wealthy, it's not about making you healthy. It's about living and having a life in and through Jesus. Amen? Amen. Found this helpful? Okay, let's have some time for Q&A. Okay, we already have our first question. Okay, what happens if they give you an answer that you don't want?
That doesn't satisfy you also.
Yeah. Give me an example of what you mean by that.
Sometimes you find that you expect something that will be relevant to what you're asking. The person wants to make a statement.
Yeah, so practical example. A little while back we were coming back from an evangelism conference, and in order for us to earn our dinner, my team leader said, listen, there's no such thing as a free lunch. I want you to share the gospel with 2 people before I pay for dinner. So I take a young person with me and I say, okay, well, let's go and share the gospel with 2 people. And we see this guy in a hardware, he's waiting outside of a hardware shop, and he's sitting there smoking a cigarette. And I'm going, that's the guy I'm going to go and speak to. And I go up to him, and I introduce myself, we joke a little bit, and I ask him, I said, listen, from what you are telling me here, do you believe in God? He goes, yeah. I said, well, if you could ask God one question, what would it be? And he goes, well, why is the sky blue? Okay, that is not what I was expecting. Okay,
So I could literally turn around and go, man, you're useless, you're being stupid, you're being, come on, okay? But I diffused that with humor. I said, come on, you know, I know you're joking around. If you could seriously ask God one question, what would it be? Because, you know, didn't you do science at school? Didn't you learn what makes the sky blue? And he goes, yeah. So I said, yeah. I said, no, seriously, if you could ask God one question, what would it be? And this guy stops smoking, takes his cigarette out of his mouth, throws it down on the ground. He says, I could ask you, he's being serious. He's like half face change. You're being serious. If I could ask God one question, it would be this. Why does my brother, who's a good man, have cancer? So I go, whoa! Okay. How am I going to answer that? Okay. So what do? I ask him another question. I say, my friend, I'm so sorry to hear that. But can you just tell me, how did you go from why is the sky blue to asking why is there pain and suffering in the world? Okay? That's like a massive jump. Why is that? And then he begins to unfold and open up to even more things. So going, oh wow, this is not just about your brother. This is about some other things. And we were able to speak with him. I unfortunately didn't get to share the gospel with him because he says, I know where this is going, I don't want you to hear about this. Okay, and I said, I can understand your thinking. Okay. But please, you're not just someone that I want to tick off on my notch. Here is my number. If you want to talk to me about this, please, I'm willing to do this. Yeah. And that's the truth about evangelism, folks. We are responsible to share the good news. We're not responsible for how people respond. Okay? We are in a partnership with Jesus and the Holy Spirit. Okay? Our responsibility is to share the hope that we have, to share the good news. How people respond to that, that's their decision. Now we hope that they would make it in the positive, but if they're not yet ready, that's okay. Because if I've done a good job now, maybe someone else in the next 10 minutes or in the next day can nudge that person further along. So it's not always about, well, I want you to give me my answer. Okay? It is listening to that person. One ear to the problem, one ear to the Holy Spirit. Okay? And moving it along. Okay? Because we don't want to be that type of person where our evangelism feels forced and insensitive and uncaring. We just want to be able to say, well, you see, I shared the gospel with 10 people today. That's great. Okay? So does that help answer that? Okay? Ask a question by asking a question. Anyone else?
Yeah, I have to confess, I came to this breakout because of the title.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what we've done here is way off base from what I expected. So, why do you call yourself African Enterprise?
Okay, so why do we call ourselves African Enterprise? Okay, so African Enterprise, as I said, is an evangelistic organization founded by Dr. Michael Cassidy. And in the birthing of the organization, he didn't want the organization to be known as the Michael Cassidy Evangelistic Association. Okay? Even though he had great friends. Billy Graham was one of his closest friends. He had Luis Palau. They were very good friends. He didn't want to have an evangelistic association known by his name. So he decided to call it something else. Something that would open doors. An African Enterprise opens doors. Okay? But it also happened to be the name of the ship that he was on when he was coming on mission. Okay? So he chose African Enterprise because he wanted it to spread out the gospel like an enterprise does all across Africa.
Yeah.
pocket knife, of course, goes everywhere. So, I want to
You see, but it's also,
if you're going to do the same.
we have 5 key pillars within African enterprise. So it's evangelism and discipleship is our primary pillar, but then there's also leadership development, community transformation, leadership development, and youth empowerment. And in all of those areas, we want to lift people up. And because it's for lack of a better word, because it's a secular term, when we're going into countries, they don't just see us as an evangelistic organization, because we can bring in aid, we can bring in training, we can bring in skills development, other things that basically allow us to get into countries. Good question. I'll give you your $50 later. Anyone else?
That we've never woken up.
You have people in life you want to listen to all the time.
Some of you will know.
How do you analyze that? Those kind of people who always want to be listened to, but they don't want to listen.
Well, when I make that statement is that it's because people want to be heard. Okay? So it's because they want their feelings to be known. Okay? And that's what listening does. I don't necessarily have to agree with you. I don't have to follow your decision. But I have, and so I've taken that into context. Okay? You've been heard. Okay? And I think that's also a sign of wise leadership, is that you allow people to speak so that they can be heard. You don't want to make unilateral decisions and then everyone goes, well, I'm not going to talk because what's the point? Then you actually weaken the organization.
Don't you think that's what the hierarchy says in the church? Always wants to be listened to.
Yeah. But it works both ways.
Thank you, Gary.
Yes, Monica.
Yes, I'm hearing about this for the first time, the African enterprise. It's for the first time. Do you have any marketing, maybe a website where
Yes,
you
we do.
get
So
information?
in the tents, you know, that as you're going out for where your tea is and everything else like that, we're the first booth. Okay? And there's a little display video telling a little bit more about what African Enterprise is. It tells a little bit more about our youth program. And then there's information there on the ministry. And we also have a conference center. We're based in Pietermaritzburg. So if you're wanting to bring people away for a retreat or a conference or a church camp, we're able to accommodate up to 100 people. In nice, comfortable surroundings. We've got a beautiful campus with waterfalls and nature walks. Our neighbor is the KZN head office for KZN Wildlife. So we get to enjoy all of the animals for free. So you can have nature walks and everything else like that out in Harrisburg. But we do have a little booth in the tent.
How long does your courses run? Is it a 1 week course or
It all depends. So we have a variety of courses. Some of them are a few hours. Some of them are a few months. Our sewing program lasts about a year because it's a full qualification. And then we also have a pastor's training program that takes about 2 years to complete. And that program in itself, we call it Earn While You Learn. So you don't have to come to campus for 3 years full time. We've divided the training into 7 modules that you break up over the course of 2 years. And you do 2 days of training, of theory, and then you go back into your local church, put that into practice, and then you're assessed on that, and then you come back for the next dose, and then you go back to either your church or your work environment. We've had people that are teachers that are feeling that, hey, maybe God's calling me into another role. But they've changed because now what they really are looking for is, how can I be an effective pastor? You can be an effective pastor as a teacher because your parish is your classroom. And so we work through that environment. And then other times we do custom sort of materials. So churches often ask me, hey, you know, we need help with A, B, and C. Can you help me do something? So we do it over a weekend or an hour or two and things like that. So it's a variety of programs with variety of events.
I don't know when I look at our church, I realize that's okay.
Vision driven as an unanchored church. So that thing on vision, everyone has memorized the vision.
I mean, when you go experience realize
Disciple making process in that church.
it's a struggle. And they're not easy. Or, you know, at the rate that you see that they're
And what's the next
So
exciting vision?
the challenge that we face in Africa, it's not just an African thing, but I want to bring it home, is I wish I had a little whiteboard, but I'm drawing an iceberg. Can you see the iceberg?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the thing with an iceberg is that you can only see the first 10%. You can't see the whole iceberg. The majority of the iceberg is under the water. Okay? You know, what sunk the Titanic wasn't the iceberg that they saw, it was underneath. How do we know that? It's because the cut was under the water. Okay? And so if you've got this picture of an iceberg, on the top is your behavior. Okay? That's what people can see. Underneath that is your beliefs. Okay? Now, we live in a country and we live in a continent where lots of people say they are Christian. Okay? But in many respects, it's just words. Because the truth of the matter is, if we were truly Christian, a Christian nation, we wouldn't have issues like gender-based violence, we wouldn't have issues like crime, we wouldn't have issues of teenage pregnancies and divorces and things like that. Okay? We wouldn't have that. Because the Bible says, you know, that those are not what allows us to flourish. Okay? So our behavior is actually the result of our true beliefs. Okay? So belief drives behavior. Okay? Now, the work of discipleship doesn't happen at behavior level. It happens at belief level. Okay? So, being a follower of Jesus Christ requires the deep work of discipleship. And deep work of discipleship isn't 3 classes to attend and now you're in church. Okay? It is the daily dying to self and surrendering. Okay, it's saying, you know, how do I handle this situation, Jesus? Okay? Even when I mess up, okay, I mess up a lot. I've learned to say sorry, okay, because that's what forgiveness does. Okay? So we need to have that deep work of discipleship. The problem is that we have allowed discipleship to be done via TV and social media and things like that, not in true community of church. And so we will only see society change when we actually start to do the deep work of discipleship. It's sitting down with your children at the table, having meals at the table, not in front of the TV. Okay? I know it's easy. It's so much easier, and so because we're all stressed out. Okay? But there's a cost to pay for this. Okay? And so if we can really do that, you know, I think we will be a stronger society. So focus on that deep work of discipleship, not being hurried through life, not making decisions purely on economics. They're saying, hey, look, you are my provider. How are you going to help me provide? Things like that. So you live a Christ-centered life. And I think that will change society. Because it's Christ-centered lives that turn the world upside down. Just think about this, folks. Christianity started 2,000 years ago because 120 people were empowered by the Holy Spirit to be the witness of Jesus. They weren't politicians. They weren't billionaires. They didn't invent anything. But they took their life, they surrendered it to Jesus Christ, and they were faithful witnesses. They literally turned the world upside down. You know, 200 years later, it became the state's religion. Okay. You know, if I were to take you back to that time period when Jesus was around, and I did like a news report, and I says, hey, listen, you know, you've heard about these Christians. You know, they're talking about a new revolution, stuff like that. Do you think that they will succeed compared to the mighty Roman Empire? What would you say as a normal member? You haven't read the Bible, it hasn't been invented. Not a chance, right? You see the might of the Roman Empire, okay, and his little band of people. 2,000 years later, those that are most precious to us, like our children, we call them Mary, John, Peter, Paul, Andrew, and we call our dogs Nero and Caesar. Okay? Why is that? Because Christians filled with the spirits, sold out to Jesus, told others, without being that guy, what Jesus had done. It was Christians who started hospitals, it was Christians who started orphanages and stuff like that. Why? Because they now had a worldview that everyone is made in the image of God. That wasn't the belief, the primary belief prior to Jesus. Okay? They literally turned the world upside down. So much so that one of the Roman emperors realized politically what this was going to do to the Roman Empire. So he actually gathered all of the premiers, and he said, listen, we've got to outlove these Christians, because if we don't, we're going to be wiped out. So they started a social program, okay? But it collapsed because all politicians did was they took the money for themselves. It's not just a South Africa phenomenon. This goes back because of the human heart. Okay? They couldn't outlove the Christians because they didn't have the power of the Holy Spirit. So that's what's going to take to bring about that hope and that change. That was a long answer to a short question. I think we've got time for one more question. One more. Okay.
But I think it's a comment also from the very question and the answer. But if I hear you well, just I think my summary is that maybe when we talk to our church, we start with the why don't we do? We don't start with the interest and the basic part. So I think to me, it's like an aha moment. Say, that's what we've done before. Because the world view is not for us outside. It's also to start at home, and I think they outclass us in the sense that as soon as you are in the world, you can't even compete with them because they tend to be knowing more than we around the world, and we always crumble and collapse. But we can't even believe that the answers around the world. So I think we just have to, I have to lead in to say where are they and what is right their place. And if I can know that, I don't have the answer, just pray to God that I can help and God. And I think there's a prayer we can say, this was at our spirit. So we are praying. So I think that's where I'm going. As a parent and also the church, because we all grapple around.
should have gone there.
I want kids. I want to say the church, the kids in the church are not there, but my kids are at home. You know, that type of thing. That's right.
Okay, folks. Well, I wish we had some more time, but I know the lunch queue is calling. So thank you so much. I hope that this was helpful. And that